Good morning. Every year we take a couple times a year to learn or discuss a practice, a way that you and I can grow to be more like Jesus. Something we can commit ourselves to on a regular basis, that through that practice we will find more of who He is and in turn become more like who He is. And today we kick off one of my favorite practices, that of community. Learning to be together with others in a way that is healthy and whole and life-giving. And to kick this off, I need to share a little bit about why I wasn't here last week. So last week I was helping lead a retreat that I had been asked to lead, and it was my birthday weekend, and I really didn't want to lead it, but I kind of felt like I didn't have much choice, and I said yes out of love for the people who asked. And so my birthday last week, Saturday, started out at 5:45 in the morning, because that's what I want to do on my birthday. And it was going until 11 p.m. at this retreat. So I had a full day ahead of me. And during the day, I sat down at the table. I was speaking a few times and presenting and talking, and I was helping encourage some of these retreat participants through their journey. And they had put out in front of us baskets with a little bit of fruit, but mostly candy, so that throughout that long day, if we needed a little sugar to keep us going, we could have it. And I looked over into the basket, and I saw something that seemed just right for the occasion, some peanut M&Ms. Now, my preference would be peanut butter, but peanut are the next best thing. And I was really excited because I thought that's just what I need today. And then I picked up the packet of peanut M&Ms. And from where you're sitting, you may not see this. This is an unopened packet of peanut M&Ms, and there is one singular M&M in this packet. It's a lie. It's not M&Ms, just M. And something so small left me really disappointed. I felt like I had been robbed of a great joy and something that I really was looking forward to. But I bring that up because I think most of us in our Christian life try to be a lot like this M. Most of us think we're more than okay by ourselves. We don't need other people. We can do this thing where we show up and maybe we see people and we're friendly on a surface level, but then we go back to our lives and we do this Jesus thing called faith on our own, and that's good enough. Had I opened this packet and eaten this M&M, I would have gotten the joy of an M&M. Just one. And nobody wants to eat just one. See, had I opened it to eat it, I would have had some joy, but I was missing the fuller joy. What I was really looking forward to, what I was really wanting in the moment. And I believe that community is, for you and me, the greatest joy God has given to us. This life together, this shared faith and journey towards Jesus. But most of us in our culture think we can just do it alone. And here's a little secret. You can, but you will be missing out on the fullness of the life abundant that Jesus created for you, that He offers to you. All of His goodness, you will only taste a small portion of it if you don't share life with others. So today, as we talk about community, we're going to begin, and perhaps the best place to begin to talk about community, Genesis 1:1. Because why not begin in the very beginning? You probably are familiar with this verse. Here you go. It says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." That's it. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And maybe you're wondering, why would we start there? That feels out of place. It has nothing to do with community, except there's a little bit of grammar that for all of you who love to be grammar particular and correct and edit other people's grammar, let me just tell you, you would hate Hebrew, okay? Because here's what happens in the Hebrew that we lose in English. When it comes to verbs, verbs have to match the noun or the subject that they are serving. So a subject is a thing that is doing something. A verb is the action that is being done. And they have to match. So, for example, it would be incorrect English for me to say, I are currently preaching. You guys would be like, that doesn't sound right, because we know that that's plural and not singular. Well, here in the beginning, the Bible begins with a grammatical error that should frustrate all of you. Because in Hebrew, what happens is God is singular in the beginning, but God created in a plural fashion. And when you read this Genesis account, every one of the verbs here is plural, while every one of the nouns of who is doing the action is singular. And for a culture that would listen to this being read, they would have read in the beginning and right off the bat, both been frustrated and their hair would have raised a little. Something is set up here that doesn't make sense. How can a singular being do a plurality of things? How does this work together? A little bit later, there's this verse, one that's often questioned and raises a whole lot of what ifs and how does this work? In verse 26, it says this, then God, again singular, said, let us, plural, make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over the livestock and over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Once again, the grammar, for all who would be hearing this in Hebrew, raises a whole lot of confusion. A singular God, let us create in our image. But how? I begin here as we talk about community, because I believe that community is not truly an option. We often try to do life without community. We try to mostly keep to ourselves, but I believe in the very nature of creation, the very fabric of this universe, community is inherently built in. In fact, as Christians, one of the things that is a confusing mystery that sets us apart from other worldly religions is we believe in this thing called a Trinity. The Trinity is a made-up word that came in the 1st or 2nd century, maybe the 3rd century, but it came from Latin, 3 in 1, tri-unity, together 3 as one singular piece. And if you try to spend much time comprehending this mystery, you'll find yourself really confused. And if you spend a lot of time trying to find the right metaphor or analogy, you'll find yourself probably going off into some heresy along the way. Just warning. But this word was made up to describe what we see in Scripture, that God himself in some mysterious way is community, that there are 3 parts of Jesus or of God, 3 persons of God, and yet somehow they're all only one singular God. And it's not that they're just a third and a third and a third, they're all fully each of them, and I don't fully comprehend it. But all throughout Scripture we see that this God, singular, is made up of community together. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And then this God, he makes humans, he makes people, and it says he makes them in his image, to be made like him. I believe you and I were made like him, and one of the ways we're made in his image is we were made to be together with others, to share life and not do it alone. We were made for more than just ourselves. In fact, he goes on in the next chapter and he describes a very specific person he makes, a man named Adam. And this is what he says in chapter 2 of Genesis. It says, "Then the Lord God said, 'It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for him.'" And just as a little caveat, this, because of what comes next and Eve and sin and all the fall that they enter into and all the pain, this verse is usually used in weddings to refer to like, here's why you need a spouse and you complete each other and you're perfect for each other. And anybody in here who's married is like, that is not true. We are not complete and they are not perfect. It's never me, it's always them. At least for my wife, it's always me, and you guys know that's probably true. This is about marriage. But I think it's about so much more. And I think the church has done a really big disservice in how much we've emphasized this is about marriage in such a way that we've said single people, the solution is to just get married. All the loneliness and the hurt and all the longing for community, just get married and it will be better. But I don't think that's the story of Scripture. When God says it's not good for man to be alone, yes, he gives to him a wife. But I also think he's once again reiterating the very way in which we were created is to be together with others. And if you're in here and you're single and you've heard this verse used as like, what's wrong with you that you're not married yet because you're 22 and you should be married by now? Or heaven forbid you're 29 and not married? Oh no, then what? Let me just tell you, Jesus was 33 and unmarried. And Paul was also unmarried. So it's okay to be single. It's not okay to be alone. And you and I, as we practice community, whether we're married or whether we're single, we actually create a space that transcends our relationships with one particular other person. We create a space together that says we need to be as one. In fact, all throughout this story, we see God referring to his people, the people of Israel, all as singular. His people are all one. He said, Jesus himself says later on, if my people would be unified, what could stand against them? In fact, one of his last prayers was praying specifically that those who would come after him would be unified. We would be one together. To be made in God's image is to have a longing for community. Now, I don't listen to a whole lot of Rhett Walker's music, but I was listening to an interview yesterday. If you follow anything about Rhett Walker, he just won this Lifetime Award, and he shared this quote in this interview I found really, really interesting. He was talking about collaborating with people on his album, and he said, when you work with others, they bring something out of you never knew you could access or discover. I think that is the nature of Christian community. When we recognize it's not just about me and Jesus, it's not just about my faith, but it's actually about us together being who God made us to be. First and foremost, being loved, and then in turn, being people who love others. And not just superficially, but on a meaningful and personal level. When we work with others, we begin to discover things about God and about ourselves and about our community we never knew we had access to. And I promise you, a communal life is the best life. But unfortunately, it is also the hardest life. See, our temptation with a me-centered, individualistic faith that says, I'm good enough with Jesus, I don't need others. Our temptation is when community begins to grow, you know what grows with it? Problems. Because wherever there are at least one or two Christians, there will be a sinner present. And when sin is present, we cause harm to those whom we should love. And we say what we shouldn't say, and we don't do what we should do, and our own brokenness comes out because people who are hurting will end up hurting other people. And if we don't learn how to transform the pain we're feeling, we will transfer it freely. And the problem with Christian community most of the time is we begin down this journey of getting to know people personally, and then something difficult comes. Someone difficult comes. And so we decide this isn't for me and I'm out, and we leave. And when we do that, time and time again, we miss out on the greatest beauty in front of us. Last year, I had the opportunity to spend a week at a monastery, and while I was there, I got to learn a lot about the monks, and there's something interesting about a monastic community. These individuals have committed their entire life to one group of people. No matter what comes up, no matter the opportunity, they will stay in one place with one people, no matter what. And when you first start out together and you're living together and you're worshiping together and you're praying together and you're working together and you're doing everything together, you begin to see this other person and all of their faults. You begin to see all of their problems, and anger and bitterness and frustration wells up, and you say, I'll be fine with Jesus here, but I don't need them over there. But when you commit to a community, even through the pain, and you work together, being made in God's image to pursue this, what ends up happening over time is, after a couple of years, those things that drove you nuts begin to be tolerable. And after a few more years, those things actually begin to be something you love. And after a few more years still, those things begin to be things that remind you that maybe they are not the problem. Maybe you are. And when we give our lives to pushing through the hurt and the pain and the challenge that comes from community, to saying, these are the people I will be together with. When we give our lives to that, the fruit at the end is the most wonderful, because we've learned how to persevere through all kinds of hardship and trial. This is why if you're preparing to get married, I will warn you, I promise, I will encourage you to say, are you sure you want to get married? Because marriage is really hard. My wife will tell you that 3 months into marriage, she was really questioning, why did she marry me? Because I was so motivated to get married, my only goal was to get to that point. But I forgot, how do I live once I'm married? And when we moved in together, once we got married, and she realized I would leave socks next to the hamper, not in the hamper, and toothpaste on the mirror, and the toilet seat sometimes stayed up, and I wouldn't always do the dishes. In fact, I was okay with her doing the dishes most of the time while I goofed around or did anything else. When we got married, and she realized how selfish I really was, there was a whole lot of questions in her. Why did I decide to do this? And she persevered through a lot of hardship. And I, in turn, had to persevere through her letting me know that this was not all roses and lovely, and there was a lot that needed to be worked on, and we together worked through it. We got a long way to go to have the marriage I want to have, but hopefully for the next 60 years, we might get there. In fact, generally speaking, around the world, arranged marriages have a higher likelihood of succeeding than marriages that are driven by love. And not only succeeding, a higher likelihood of people who are enjoying their marriage deeply than people who got married for love. Do you know why? Because when you enter into marriage in an arranged sense, you know, I don't have a choice to flee or leave. I have to commit to making this better. And you do. And when you enter into a relationship thinking there's always an out and a way to escape, eventually you will be right. There's a way to escape because you don't have to put in the work. You and I, as Christians, were made in God's image to be with others. And sometimes this is really tough. So I want to describe a few types of relationships that we are made to be in. And before we finish, here we go. Here's the first one. This is the most personal. The kind of community would be an intimate relationship. Now, when we think of intimacy, we usually think of husband and wife, but this is not purely physical intimacy. This is intimacy on the level of people who deeply know who you are. They know your longings and your desires. They know what you need before you say it. These are the people that when everything hits the fan at 3 a.m., this is who you call first. These are the people that if you were to end up in jail, you thankfully have their number memorized, and they'll come bail you out. These are the people who will, for whatever reason, without question, drop everything to come to your aid. The reality is, you and I can only have 2 or 3 people in this category. The human brain doesn't have the capacity to have dozens or hundreds of people in this really, really close friendship level. The problem is, because we can't have this level of intimacy with everybody, sometimes we're tempted to say we don't need it with anybody. If you look at Jesus, Jesus called a handful of disciples, 12 in fact. And of those 12, he had 3 who were his inner circle. 3 that on the night when he was betrayed, he said, I'm really struggling, I need to pray, come and pray with me. 3 that when he went up on the mountain and was transformed into the glory of God, that were there with him to witness and be present for it all. 3 that were with him through all the good and the bad. Jesus had this inner circle of those whom he leaned on and relied on. And you and I need that too. Now, when you go out from this inner circle, because we can only have 2 or 3 in that place, there's this broader group, this family. And this may be biological and it may be by choice. Psychologists will say your family group can really only be about 12 to 15 people. These are the people who may not be there in the very instant, but they're going to show up the next day. These are the people who you think first, when I'm going to spend a significant portion of my life or a meaningful moment, this is who I want present. These are the ones that in weddings will stand beside you often on one side or the other to say, through thick or thin, we're in this together. That family unit, 12 to 15 people, are the ones that we share life with on a regular basis. And we invest in getting to know them on a deeper level than we do all people. Jesus also modeled this kind of family with the 12 disciples, whom he said, come and follow me. And every day they lived together, they traveled together, they ate together, they slept on the same rock together. They were together in all the things they did because it just mattered. Outside of this family group, you have a little bit broader category, that of the village. Psychologists say that you and I have the capacity to have meaningful relationships on some level with between 70 to 150 people, which to me, that sounds exhausting. A meaningful relationship with 150 people? How can you do that? But psychologists say we can have some level of feeling connected to and knowing people in this capacity. Every one of us needs this broader family. In fact, Jesus, he had the 3 and he had the 12, and also he had the 72 whom he sent out, who were following him wherever he went. He had this broader community of people that he shared life with that weren't as close and proximate as those 12 or as those 3, but they were still a significant part of his life. I think this place, the village, is the role of the church by and large. When we gather on Sunday, you look around and there's about 100 or 150 people here, and we together get to be in this kind of community where we know one another and we care about one another, but also you cannot be there for every person's need in this church. Neither can I. And so in any strong and healthy community, we have to learn how do we live in and love this big village we have while also beginning to lean into the 12 or the 3, those who will get to know us even deeper. And then you have beyond this, from a psychological perspective, the tribe. The tribe would be anything above that 150, those whom you have an affinity towards or some kind of connection with. So, for example, you may have your tribe of all the other volunteer fans. And it doesn't matter that you've never met them. They're wearing their orange and white checkerboard overalls, and you immediately have a connection. And you love them, even if you don't know their name or anything about them. Your tribe is going to be people who you are moderately connected to by something, but not necessarily anything deep and personal and meaningful. Here in this church, we belong to the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. So you can go all over the country and meet other Lutherans who share similar thoughts and attitudes, and also some who share very different thoughts and are nothing like us. Last week, we had Vicar Mike from Grace, a student becoming a pastor. Another church that said, hey, we share a lot in common, and he came in to fill in and to be a part of our community for that day. This tribe is really necessary, really important, but is the most superficial of all the communities, because the connections that bind us are usually distant and broad. As Americans, we're often really comfortable associating with our tribe, but never interested in learning who our village or our family or our kin are. We're never really interested in that intimate relationship because that actually costs something of me. In fact, it costs a lot. Now, what does this relationship look like? If we're going to move from the tribe down deeper into finding those 2 or 3 who can be our people, if we're going to move into this place of being intimately known by just a few and knowing quite a few, 12 or 15 well and 70 a little more, if we're going to move into this place, how do we do it? Well, it starts out with learning cliches. Now, you might say, what in the world do you mean by that? A cliche is just the things that everybody kind of knows, the stereotypes we take for granted. So when you watch a movie and there's a guy wearing white and a guy wearing black, usually the guy wearing black's the bad guy who's about to rob the place, and the guy wearing white is not. All right, that's fine. It's not always true. but it helps us associate a whole lot of information and process it and understand. You may look out and say, wow, guys with long hair and tattoos, they're not very trustworthy. Or you may look at Fletcher and me and be like, we love that. That's awesome. They're my people. Cliches are the things you can know about everybody without really knowing anything about them. But after we learn cliches about people, we move a little bit closer and we begin to learn facts about people. Oh, his name is Adam. He lives in Knoxville. He just had a birthday. Things that are just arbitrary, it is what it is. And learning facts about people is how we start most conversations. Oh, hi, what's your name? Where do you work? What do you do for a living? Are you new in town? We ask these kind of facts on a regular basis. But most of the time, we get really stuck right there. We don't actually seek to know people more than that. But if we want to learn more than just facts about people, we can take a bold step and begin to learn something that we don't always want to know: opinions other people have. Because we live in an age of social media, most of the time we're really good at sharing opinions with people we don't know anything about and just expecting them to believe our opinion is right, or angry when they don't. To know an opinion somebody holds is a deeper level of knowledge of who they are, but it's not the place we need to stop. And most of the time we see people who share similar opinions, and maybe because of that we say, well, I'll learn a few facts about them. Your name's Adam. Cool, my name's not. And then we begin to talk, and I'm like, we share the same opinion about this thing or that thing. We both think the same about this. That's good enough. But there's a deeper level still that's more important. For us to really get to know one another, we need to go beyond learning opinions other people hold to learning feelings that they have. An opinion and a feeling is not the same. Opinion is what you think about something, and a feeling is what's going on inside of you because of what you think about that thing. And it's not just the feelings we express. When you really get to know people well, those 12 or those 3, you really dive deep into that place. The things we get to know about their feelings are really like, hey, they actually are expressing anger, but what's going on under the surface is hurt. And they're hurting because what they see doesn't line up with what they believe, or what they know to be true doesn't line up with what they're feeling. To know that level of somebody, to be able to understand those innermost things that drive them and move them, it is a privilege. And it's not something that happens overnight and almost never happens on social media. And the deepest level of knowing somebody is moving beyond just knowing what they feel or why they feel it, to beginning to learn to know what they need, even before they say it. These kinds of relationships and friendships are the kinds in which we learn, my friend probably needs a hug or a donut just to say I'm thinking of them. Or maybe they just need someone to listen, but they're never going to ask. And I'm just going to show up and I'm going to be present. I'm going to bring them a coffee because they need it, even if they won't tell me. This deepest level of knowing the needs that drive people, not only their physical needs, but their emotional and their spiritual and their mental needs, this takes time to discover and to begin to learn, how can I be present and serve that need? And the truth is, you and I can serve some needs together as a village really well, but other needs have to happen one-on-one, in a way that we can't all together serve. And the only way we get to a place where we love people fully is by being with them enough that we discover these different layers of who they are. By spending enough time with them and asking enough questions of them and learning who they are, that we can see in them the image of God, one who was made like God, though not God. We can see one who is loved fully, even if they don't always do that which is lovable. In Luke's gospel, he uses a phrase twice that is where I'm going to end with community. He uses a phrase, the Son of Man came, and he gives 2 things. At the end of Luke in 19, he says, the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. Those who are hurting, those who are broken, those who are wandering through life saying, what's next and where do I belong? The Son of Man, that is Jesus, he came to seek and save them. And earlier in Luke, he used the same phrase one other time. The Son of Man came eating and drinking. It says this, the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and you say, look at him, a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Tax collectors and sinners, phrases used to describe those who were lost, those who were hurting, those who were not welcome in most communities. The Son of Man came seeking those who were disconnected from community, who were outside the norm, who did not belong. And I believe Luke includes this first one as his method. If the mission of God is to seek and save the lost, how did he do it? He ate and he drank with sinners and tax collectors. If you and I wish to join God in the work that he's doing and join in creating a community, how do we do it? By eating and drinking with one another, by sharing a meal, sitting down for coffee, going out for a drink, being with people around a meal will always create a deeper sense of connection and belonging. This is why when you're sick and somebody brings you soup, even if you don't want to eat the rabbit soup they brought you, true story, that happened to me one time. They didn't tell me till afterwards. I thought the chicken noodle soup tasted weird. It was rabbit. Even if you don't want to eat what they bring, the very act of somebody bringing you food has a means of endearing our heart when it is hurting. Eating and drinking is how we begin to build community. So as we start this practice, as we kick this off, where I want to end today is this. You can live your life alone, all wrapped up and nice and neat, safe from all the hurt and all the problems and all this world may have to bring. Or you can step out and take a risk and begin to be known and to get to know others. And maybe you can start this week by scheduling a meal with somebody. Maybe your family, instead of a drive-through and eating in the car, can sit down for one meal and share this meal together with the awkwardness of looking at each other and maybe even talking to each other. Maybe you can reach out to a friend who you haven't seen in a while and begin to share a meal or a drink with them. Maybe you can take that risk. Say, what if life would be better together than it is alone? Will you pray with me? Jesus, you came eating and drinking with sinners and tax collectors so that you could seek and save the lost. It is not good for man to be alone, and life is better together. So help us today to set aside our fear and our hurt and our concerns. Help us today to see that we were made in your image, created for community, and to begin to take that step, one at a time, to moving from vague cliches into that innermost place of knowing people intimately. And help us to be the kind of family, the kind of village that cares for one another and seeks and saves the lost, not by our power, but by learning to love as you have first loved us. God, we ask that you would give us peace where we are afraid. Where community has hurt us in the past, would you bring healing and help us to draw near to you? And in all things, Lord, would you be glorified?